Today, we're taking a look at calls for a federal anti-corruption commission. It's a key platform that many independents are campaigning on, and two bills have previously been brought before the Parliament but failed to get the support needed to progress. I'm delighted to say that political reporter Matthew Doran joins us now from Parliament House in Canberra. Matt, g'day, and yeah, it'll be really interesting to take a good look at this with you. So how has this played out over the course of the last term?
Joe, I've lost track of how many times you and I have discussed the issue of a National Integrity Commission on this very program here on the ABC News channel. It's something that has been kicking around for many years now, and in fact was a feature of the 2019 election campaign 3 years ago, when Scott Morrison did promise to bring forward legislation to set up a national anti-corruption watchdog. Of course, that hasn't eventuated. It was also a feature of Bill Shorten's campaign back in 2019. This has been the subject of a lot of debate over the last term of government. We saw a proposal originally put forward by then Attorney General Christian Porter. That was a draft put out there to the public so they could see what the coalition was planning there. There was a lot of feedback that it wasn't strong enough, that it was too secretive, it was really lacking the teeth that was required. Further consultation was entered into, and we all thought that there would be some tweaks made along the way to make it more palatable to the federal parliament that has just been dissolved. However, late last year, it became clear that the Prime Minister did not want to budge on that. He was going to press ahead with the bill as it stood, and was quite stubborn in his approach there, not wanting to shift and saying it was up to everyone else to back that bill and get it through Parliament. So it has been a lot of back and forth, a lot of public consultation, a lot of feedback from groups such as the Centre for Public Integrity, the Law Council, saying that improvements needed to be made. However, we are now in this situation going into the 2022 election where the coalition's model is basically what we had at the last election, and there is something of a standoff underway, Joe.
Okay, so for people heading into the ballot box in the next 4 weeks or so, and this is an important issue for them, set this out for us now. What are the key differences in the proposals put forward by the major parties with this Integrity Commission?
Yeah, so the Centre for Public Integrity has run the ruler over the two models, the Coalition and the ALP model, and tried to come up with the key differences there. It's important to point out in the first instance, the Coalition model, it is allowing investigations into public servants, it's allowing investigations into politicians, it's also looking at law enforcement. But most importantly here, there are no public hearings, and this is something that has been quite contentious, which I'll pick up on in just a moment. There's also no public reporting under the coalition model, so you don't necessarily know what the National Integrity Commission has been doing, what it's found, what sort of recommendations it's made to the DPP to potentially press charges, or whether or not it's actually dropped its investigations. And in the same way, there's no findings of fact. So we're not talking about a corruption commission saying that someone has committed a criminal offence or has done something that is says that they are guilty of a crime or anything like that. We're talking about, based on evidence put forward to the Commission, a finding of fact that they have breached certain policies or procedures and the like there. And another sticking point from the Coalition's point of view, from the Coalition's model, is that it can't launch its own inquiries. It is reliant on referrals being made to it. So on the opposite side of the ledger, the ALP...
Matt, just before you go, the ALP, can you I just want to get this clear. So with the Coalition model, its proposed Integrity Commission could investigate, for example, a politician, but not make a finding against them?
It wouldn't necessarily be reporting that to the public. It would effectively gather a whole bunch of evidence, give it to, say, the AFP or the DPP to then consider going further on it. You wouldn't necessarily get that finding in the initial instance that a politician, a minister, a backbencher, whoever it is, has necessarily broken the law or breached any sort of, say, the ministerial standards or things like that. So that's one of the most contentious parts of the coalition proposal there. So it's not making that ruling, that finding, in the way that we see a number of state and territory organisations making those decisions. So if we look at the ALP proposal here, it is similar in that it is looking still at politicians, at public servants, at law enforcement, but it can hold public hearings. And we do want to stress here, when we're talking about the ability to hold public hearings, we're not saying it's open slather. Labor isn't saying that every single utterance that are made by commissioners and witnesses needs to be open to the public. They're at least saying there needs to be a discretion for the commissioners to throw open the doors and allow that public scrutiny there. It can issue public reports, so you would necessarily find out what it's been doing. It can make those findings a fact, and it can also launch inquiries off its own bat, something that Labor says is particularly necessary because it needs to have that independence to operate in its own way, and that any sort of government of the day, whether it's the coalition government, a Labor government, doesn't want to be seen as stymieing that process if it means, for example, looking into a politician of their own political persuasion. Now, we mentioned in the introduction that there are two other bills that have been introduced to Parliament, and they've been sitting there on the books for some time. One of them is from Green Senator Larissa Waters. That's been dealt with in the Senate but hasn't gone any further, despite a number of political manoeuvres to try to bring that up for debate over the last couple of years. The other one, and it's probably the more high-profile one, is from Independent MP Helen Haines, and this is the bill that caused the Prime Minister a bit of grief last year when one of his own backbenchers, Tasmanian Liberal Bridget Archer, crossed the floor to try to bring on debate on this bill. Bridget Archer saying it's not perfect, but she was grumpy that the Parliament has been avoiding even debating this matter. So those bills are there. They also have various differences with the Coalition and the ALP model, but it is something that the Parliament has been looking at for a number of years now.
Okay, so Matthew, so what's the political calculation here, and what do you make of the Prime Minister's criticism of the Labor proposal? That he's often asked the question about that, and he kind of dismisses it as all they've done is put forward a couple of pages.
Yeah, let's pick up on that point here first, because the government, the Prime Minister, very keen to say that there are more than 300 pages of legislation currently on the public record, able to be poured over from the Coalition, going through the ins and outs of how a Commonwealth Integrity Commission would work, as opposed to Labor, which has as he describes it, to use his words, a 2-page fluff sheet. Now, this is a reference to what is on the Labor website, outlining what they see as the priorities, what they think needs to be improved on the Coalition model. He is right. There isn't another 300 pages of alternate legislation from the opposition there, but that's how the Prime Minister tries to push this off into the distance. When we come to the issue of a political calculation, Barnaby Joyce, the Deputy Prime Minister, really belled the cat here the other day when he said that when he's walking along the street in Singleton or Muswellbrook or Gladstone, he's not hearing people talk about a National Integrity Commission, and that's what the Coalition is looking at here, hoping that people aren't that engaged or that enraged by the fact that there isn't a National Integrity Commission as yet, that they are prioritising other things like economic management, like job creation. However, that might work in some seats around the country, such as the ones that Barnaby Joyce has labelled there. But when you look at the threat being posed to the Coalition by a number of the so-called teal independents, a lot of them are running on a platform of climate action and also action on integrity. So there's always going to be differing views around the country, and the calculation that's being made here by the government saying it's not a priority, they're only going to introduce it if Labor expressly back that bill before Parliament, despite the fact that that is not really how legislation is made here. The sausage-making process of legislation is far more complex than that, and there are many, many bills that have been introduced over many terms of Parliament which don't have that express bipartisan support before they lob into the House or the Senate. The Coalition hoping that it's not front and centre of voters' minds and that they have other priorities.
But on that point, Matt, it was interesting to see in the Vote Compass survey how prominent the Integrity Commission concerns were.
Yeah, certainly. So Vote Compass has said that it is one of the big issues for Australian voters. The Coalition would dismiss that by saying, well, Vote Compass is appealing to people who are genuinely interested in politics, or they're wanting to see where their personal views align with the major parties. We heard Scott Morrison, he's got a bit quiet on the quiet Australians. He hasn't uttered that phrase that much over the last couple of years or so, but certainly that was his pitch to voters in 2019, saying the quiet Australians want different issues than necessarily people who are fully engaged with the political process, who are debating this at length, such as the ones who go and click on Vote Compass, as much as we are encouraging people to go and do that as an exercise in democracy ahead of the ballot on the 21st of May. So it is something that some voters, many voters, are saying is an issue, but the Coalition hoping that it would be further down the list of priorities for others.
But the Prime Minister has talked about tabling legislation.
And this is something that we do also need to pick up on. The Prime Minister says that he has tabled his 300-odd pages of legislation, that it's there for all to see. That's right, he has done that. He did it in question time. He said that he was going to table that document. He did so, and now it is a matter of public record, even though it was already up on the Attorney General Department's website. Tabling legislation is vastly different to introducing legislation.
Yep.
Introducing legislation is the kick-starting of that legislating process. It is when you start to see that debate on the bill, on its merits. You start to see amendments in Parliament. Tabling something, you could table anything, and quite often we do see that in Parliament where politicians are making a point. They seek to table media articles that prove their point or criticise their opposition. So tabling is very different to introducing. So it's a game of, or an exercise in semantic gymnastics from the Prime Minister there when he puts that forward repeatedly in his press conference.